the man who murdered Matthew Perry was exposed in court by Matthew Perry's own mother in a heartbreaking letter you need to hear. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signore. The tragic loss of Matthew Perry is still one many of us are getting over. He had struggled with addiction and substances for so long, but was on his way to recovery. It turns out it was his own assistant was who ultimately betrayed him. And Matthew Perry's family has now revealed and exposed this assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa, in a heartbreaking letter that I want to share with you all because it reveals so much more detail about what actually happened and who's truly responsible. I think it's important we all be aware of this. So Suzanne Morrison, Matthew's mother, recounts her sorrows as she assailed her son's former assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa, who admitted to injecting Perry with multiple doses of substance shortly before his death. Kenny was the first of 5 people implicated in the actor's death to reach a plea deal with prosecutors in exchange for pleading guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute the substance causing the death. Perry's former assistant agreed to be a key witness against others charged in relation to Perry's death, which is kind of frustrating because honestly, I kind of blame this guy the most. And he took a plea deal, so he doesn't get to get as punished as some of the other people who, got the substances or people who deserve to be punished. But Kenneth's the one who ultimately was his friend, his assistant, who betrayed all of the family and Matthew himself in injecting it directly without any experience. Doesn't know even how to do it. So in the letter, Morrison opens by establishing the close bond she and her late son had. My name is Suzanne. I'm also Mama Muma, the name my son Matthew gave me, the name I loved to hear all those years, she begins. He was my matzo, my manu. He was, in spite of all we went through, my heart and soul. And then one night, he was just a body, laying all but naked on the cold, damp grass of his backyard. Helicopters circled overhead, eager for a glimpse of my dead little boy, a picture they could show the whole world while I stood out on the street in the cold and begged for a blanket to cover him. Impossible, of course. The following day, Morrison was able to see him in a mortuary where Perry had been bathed and dressed. She writes that her son looked almost beautiful and somehow relieved, like a gladiator who had finally earned his rest. Morrison's letter delves into Perry's decades-long battle with substance abuse. Matthew fought for half his life, more than half, against addiction. Fought and failed and came back to fight again. Once the letter turns to Kenny, whom she calls Iwamasa Kenny, Morrison calls out his alleged treachery. And this is Kenny right here. She says that it was such a relief when Perry hired Kenny because they all believed that he truly understood Perry's struggles over the 25 years they worked together. Matthew trusted Kenny. We trusted Kenny. Kenny's most important job was to be Perry's companion and guardian in his fight against addiction. According to the primary responsibility was to ensure that Matthew remained what he wanted to be, drug-free. Kenny knew, should he feel unduly pressured, that with one phone call to any number of the people in Matthew's orbit, reinforcements would be on the way and his job would be safe. Meaning, like, he couldn't be threatened with, I'm going to fire you if you don't give me the substance. There were plenty of people around to help Matthew to stand up and support Kenny to ensure that no pressure was ever given. But instead of protecting Matthew, he aided and abetted illegal drug taking arranged for one source of supply. Then another, Morrison writes in a fury, shot the substances into Matthew's body, though he was not in the least qualified. He did it even though he could see, anyone could have seen, it was so obviously dangerous. And he did it again and again. Morrison was particularly incensed at how Kenny tried to be supportive after Perry's death, despite having administered multiple doses of the substance that caused Perry's death. And when he had killed my son, he kept a sharp eye on me. He sent me songs. He drew a little map to help me find my way around the cemetery. If he saw a rainbow, one of Matthew's favorite things, he would call me. Says that Kenny even insisted on speaking at Matthew's funeral and clung to me and the family as if he was somehow the good guy who tried to save Matthew. Morrison claims that all along he seemed to be watching me, checking, did I know something? She goes on to accuse Perry's assistant of threatening legal action to pry a settlement from workman's comp after it became obvious there would be no financial payout for him. Ultimately, she writes, we trusted a man without a conscience, and my son paid the price. After praising the detectives who investigated behind the death, Morrison muses on whether closure is even possible for her. I have to say the word closure, such a thing doesn't exist. Ask my mother whose child has been torn away so mercilessly. Ask any mother whose child has been torn away so mercilessly. Nothing takes his pain away, nor will it. I am sure for as long as I live. There was also a letter from Mathew's sister, who has no sympathy for this man whatsoever. The sister goes on to say that at one point in the trial, Your Honor, you asked counsel a question at the sentencing of f.r.i.e.n.d.s about who was more culpable, the drug dealer responsible for supplying the substance that killed my brother, or the so-called loyal assistant who bought the substance by any means necessary, injected him with a lethal dose, and left him to die. I think it's safe to guess what my answer would be. His sentencing is upcoming, but truly, truly heartbreaking details to know, especially this implication that Kenny, which I want to find more photos so you see a picture of Kenny here. This fact that Kenny, here he is, allegedly, according to the family, was well aware of what he did, his involvement, and then tried to play like he wasn't. I find this all so despicable. And so tragic. And yes, all these people that supplied should be also charged. But this man is the one who actually injected him. The man who Perry trusted to be there to help him through this struggle. Mathew's sister goes on to say, trashing Kenny and writing in the letter, she has no sympathy for the assistant. Caitlin says, no matter what happens in the case, my big brother will be dead. The decision you are weighing now is not one I can so easily ignore. Until now, the defendants in this case have been suppliers, people willing to risk lives and exploit people living with substance use disorder for their own financial gain. I almost feel bad for them. I'm in a moral way to make a living, if you ask me. But they are few of a many, and it's hard luck to be the ones who end up with tarnished names and time to do. I can find sympathy just for about anyone you see. I have no sympathy for Kenny. She wasn't there the night Mathew died. I cannot read Kenny's thoughts. I never will know if the lethal dose of the substance was only lethal by accident. I would be foolish to say that I could never make a life or death kind of mistake. I hope I never do, of course. In the shock of such thing, I can see how I might want to run away from what had happened. What I would not do is hound the grieving family left behind. I would not weave a story to cover my tracks. I would not try to extort a payout from the mother whose firstborn son's life had been lost at my hands. Oh, brutal reality check that's coming in from Mathew Perry's family as Kenny is now facing his sentencing. And the question is, will he actually get a proper sentence? Where do you guys stand? Do you blame the people, the doctors and the dealers who are out there keeping this? Obviously, it's good that they are serving time, and many of them are. But this is the man who then took that substance and against all injected it into Mathew. It's hard to not take this man as the ultimate murderer. And obviously, I didn't even know this until all this details came out in these letters and this hearing. I do, in my opinion, from my thoughts, Kenny is the one who's ultimately responsible. And if this plea deal ultimately helps him get off to less time, that's going to be tragic. It's going to be incredibly awful. Now, other people who have been charged, just so we clear, as the sister ends, he didn't just take my brother's life, he tainted our final memories of saying goodbye. She recalls a moment during the trial where this is what I said. Jasveen Sagna was the one who was sentenced to 15 years in prison, the harshest so far. And the sister gives that quote that I said earlier, that again, ultimately, I think Kenny's even more responsible and the one who got the harshest penalty. So the hearing sentence is upcoming. There was also a hearing regarding the licensed drug counselor, Eric Fleming, who pleaded guilty to 1 count of distribution, followed by 3. He's 2 years in prison, followed by 3 years of probation. Dr. Salvador Palencia also pleaded guilty to 4 counts, and he was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison, along with 2 years of probation. Dr. Mark Chavez, who provided the doses to Placencia, pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute. He's already surrendered his medical license. He had 8 months of home confinement and 3 years of supervised release. So those are the other people that are in play. But where do you put all this? Who do you ultimately think bears the biggest responsibility here? Do you blame Kenny as well? And do you hope the judge, given even with the plea dealings, will instill the harshest penalty possible? possible. Stay tuned. We'll keep you updated on that and everything else. But truly, truly heartbreaking news coming in from Mathew Perry's family. We miss him so much. Make sure you get updated by hitting subscribe, hitting the like, leaving your comments. All that engagement helps the videos tremendously. And stay tuned for a lot more coming here on Popcorn Planet.